When people think of happiness, they often treat it like a destination, like a place they'll reach when everything finally falls into place. I'll be happy when I get the job, when she comes back, when the pain stops, when the money's there. But life doesn't work like that. It never waits for everything to be perfect. And if you keep delaying happiness until things are easy, you'll spend your entire life waiting. Here's what I've learned: happiness isn't something you stumble into. It's something you decided. It's not a result. It's a choice. That's hard for many people to accept, especially when they're going through real struggles. How do you choose happiness when your heart is broken? When you feel abandoned, rejected, invisible? The answer is simple, but not easy. You stop treating happiness like a reward, and you start treating it like a responsibility. This isn't about pretending things are fine when they're not. It's not about smiling through pain or denying your feelings. In fact, true happiness doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from facing it and still saying, "I will not let this break my spirit." You see, most people don't lack reasons to be happy. They lack the mental discipline to recognize those reasons when life is hard. And that discipline starts with mindset. You can't control the world. You can't control what people do, what leaves, what changes. But you can always control the attitude you meet it with. That's where the power lies. Think about two people go through the same failure. One collapses, the other transforms. What's the difference? One says, "This is the end." The other says, "This is the beginning of something greater." Same pain, different narrative. Happiness starts with that narrative. The inner story you tell yourself when no one's watching, because your brain listens to your thoughts. If you keep feeding it bitterness, regret, blame, it'll make you live in that state. But if you feed it hope, purpose, and the belief that this pain has meaning, that it's building you, not breaking you, your mind will follow that path. This is why you have to push yourself to be happy, especially when it's the last thing you feel like doing. That's when it matters most. That's when it counts. Anyone can smile when life is easy. Anyone can be positive when everything's going their way. But real strength is shown in how you respond when nothing is going right, when you've got every reason to fall apart. And you still choose not to. You have to reframe happiness from a mood to a muscle, something you train. You don't wait to feel inspired before going to the gym. You go, and the energy follows. It's the same with joy. You don't wait for it. You generate it. You cultivate it by how you think, how you act, and how you speak to yourself during the storms. That's what makes it sustainable. That's what makes it real. And let me tell you this, the world doesn't reward people who complain their way through hard times. It remembers the ones who grew through hard times. The ones who pushed themselves, not just to survive, but to smile while doing it. That's who you want to be. Not the victim of your story, but the author of a better one. So the next time life hits you, and it will, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask, "How can I respond in a way that makes me stronger?" Because if you can find even one reason to be grateful, one reason to stay hopeful, one reason to keep going, you've already taken back control. And happiness, real happiness, begins with that choice. One of the biggest lies we grow up believing is that pain and suffering are the same thing. But they're not. Pain is part of being alive. It's raw, it's real, and it's unavoidable. But suffering, that's a choice. That's the story we build around the pain. That's the emotional prison we construct with our own hands. And most people don't even realize they're the ones holding the key. Think about it. Two people go through heartbreak. One accepts it, learns from it, and moves forward. The other clings to it, plays it on loop, and lets it define their identity. Same pain, different outcome. That's because the pain was real, but the suffering was optional. The truth is, life is going to hurt you. It doesn't matter how smart, talented, or kind you are. You're going to be betrayed. You're going to lose people you love. You're going to fail, fall, and feel like the ground is disappearing beneath you. That's the nature of the human experience. But the suffering, that's the story you attach to that pain. That's where your power lies. When you say things like, "I'm broken," or "I'll never be the same again," what you're doing is not just describing the pain, you're becoming it. You're turning a temporary experience into a permanent identity. And that identity keeps you stuck. It tells your brain, "This is who I am now." And your brain obeys. It builds walls around you. It keeps you there. But what if instead of asking, "Why me?" you asked, "What now?" What if you stopped giving the pain a throne and started seeing it as a teacher? Because that's all it is. Pain doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to reveal you, to show you what still needs healing, what still needs growth. And if you let it, it can shape you into someone more powerful, more aware, more grounded than you were before. But only if you refuse to suffer. And that takes discipline. It takes self-awareness. It takes the ability to sit with the pain without letting it consume you. You have to stop replaying the scene over and over in your head like a broken movie reel. You have to stop giving your past the power to narrate your future. You have to say, "Yes, this hurts, but I won't let it define me." And I know, some pain cuts deep. Some pain rewrites the way you see the world. But even in the middle of it, you still have a choice. You can let it destroy you, or you can let it redirect you. That's where happiness begins. Not in the absence of pain, but in the refusal to suffer because of it. One thing I always tell people: emotions are visitors, not residents. Don't let sadness build a house in your mind. Don't let regret sleep in your bed. Feel the pain, but don't feed it. Acknowledge the hurt, but don't make it your home. The more you hold on to it, the more it holds on to you. So, start paying attention to the story you're telling yourself when things go wrong. Are you narrating your life like a victim or a warrior? Are you giving your pain a crown or using it as a stepping stone? That internal narrative is the difference between surviving and thriving. Because in the end, pain is the signal, but suffering is the echo. And you get to decide how long the echo lasts. When life gets hard, most people immediately search for comfort. They want to feel better, escape, numb the pressure. But here's the truth that no one wants to say out loud: comfort doesn't build strength. Discipline does. And in the hardest seasons of your life, what you need is not more comfort. You need more structure, more control over yourself, not your circumstances. Discipline is often misunderstood. People think it's about waking up early or grinding non-stop. But real discipline goes deeper. It's emotional. It's psychological. It's about having the ability to stay steady when your world feels like it's falling apart. When chaos hits, most minds become scattered. But a disciplined mind, it stays focused. It locks onto habits that ground it, rituals that remind I still have control over how I move, even if I don't have control over what happens. That kind of stability doesn't just happen. You train it like a muscle. You wake up even when you don't feel like it. You go on that walk, you write in that journal, you meditate for 5 minutes. Not because everything is fine, but because it's not. These aren't just routines, these are anchors. They hold you steady when the waves come. Because here's what no one tells you. Discipline is emotional armor. It protects you from yourself, from your worst instincts, from that voice in your head that says, "What's the point?" Or "It's too much. Just give up." That voice will always be there, especially when life tests you. But discipline gives you the ability to respond instead of react. It keeps your feet on the ground when your emotions are trying to pull you underwater. And that's the core difference between people who crumble under pressure and people who rise through it. It's not luck. It's not talent. It's not even intelligence. It's consistency. The people who make it through the darkest times are the ones who keep doing the small things even when they don't see instant results, especially when they don't feel motivated. They understand something most people miss: a A discipline is not about how you feel. It's about who you want to become. You want to be emotionally stable. Then train your mind like an athlete trains for a championship. No athlete waits to feel like it before showing up to practice. They show up regardless of how they feel. That's what makes them elite. That's the same mindset you need when life gets hard. You don't feel like being calm, but you breathe anyway. You don't feel like working, but you focus anyway. You don't feel like forgiving, but you let go anyway. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. And over time, those tiny acts of discipline start to rebuild you. You become more focused, more resilient, less reactive. You stop falling apart over things that once shattered you. You carry yourself differently, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. Discipline rewires your nervous system. It teaches your brain that chaos doesn't mean collapse. It means adapt. This is where long-term happiness comes from. Not from external achievements, but from internal alignment. A disciplined person is not free from pain, but they're free from emotional slavery. They don't wait for the storm to pass. They become the calm inside the storm. So if you're going through something right now, don't ask for the world to change. Change how you show up to it. Pick one habit, one anchor, one structure, and show up to it every day, no matter what. Because every time you choose discipline over emotion, you're building a version of yourself that pain can't destroy. One of the greatest emotional skills a person can develop, especially when life is testing them, is detachment. Not the cold, distant kind where you stop caring about everything. I'm talking about intelligent detachment. The ability to stay involved but not entangled. To stay aware but not obsessed. It's not about withdrawing from life. It's about freeing yourself from the things that control you emotionally. Most of our suffering comes from being too attached. We attach ourselves to specific outcomes, to people's opinions, to the illusion of control. And the moment things don't go our way, we collapse. Why? Because we didn't just want something. We needed it to feel okay. We depended on it emotionally. And anytime your peace is dependent on something outside of your control, you're not in control. Your attachments are. Look around. So many people are exhausted not because they're doing too much, but because they're holding on too tightly. To someone who doesn't care. To a plan that no longer works. To a version of themselves they've outgrown. And they wonder why they feel stuck. It's simple. You can't move forward if you're still clinging to what's behind you. You can't be free if your happiness is chained to external conditions. This is where detachment becomes a superpower, because when you learn to let go, not of effort, not of values, but of fair expectations, you begin to move through life with peace even when things don't go according to plan. You don't stop caring, you stop depending, and that distinction is everything. See, people think love means attachment, but attachment is rooted in fear, fear of losing, fear of change. Real love, whether for a person, a dream, or even for life itself, doesn't cling, it supports. It flows, it evolves. Detachment allows you to keep showing up fully while remaining grounded in your own worth. It says, I give my best, but I am not destroyed if it doesn't turn out how I imagined. Think about how much energy we lose trying to control things we were never meant to control. Someone doesn't text you back, you spiral. A job doesn't work out, you think you're a failure. You see someone else succeed, you feel like you're behind. Why? Because you're attached to how life should look instead of working with how life actually is. But when you detach, you take back your power. You stop reacting, you start observing. You stop chasing things that drain you and start attracting things that align with you. You realize that not everything needs your response, your energy, or your emotional investment. You let go, not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough to. Detachment also gives you clarity. When you're no longer emotionally entangled, you see people for who they are, not who you want them to be. You make decisions based on values, not desperation. You move with purpose, not pressure. You become calm in chaos because your peace is no longer held hostage by every fluctuation of life. Now, does this mean you stop dreaming, caring, loving? Not at all. You still pursue, but without desperation. You still care, but without obsession. You still feel, but without drowning. That's balance. That's maturity. That's what real emotional strength looks like. And once you master this, life becomes simpler. Not easier, but lighter, because you're no longer dragging emotional chains everywhere you go. You're no longer trying to control every outcome. You're just focused on your input, your mindset, your energy, your growth. So if something or someone is weighing heavy on your mind, ask yourself, am I holding on because it's right for me, or because I'm afraid to let go? Because sometimes the most powerful act of self-love is releasing the grip. Your mind believes what you tell it, over and over again. Most people don't realize this, but your internal dialogue is the foundation of your reality. It shapes your emotional state, your confidence, your decisions, your identity. And the truth is, you are never just going through something. You are telling yourself a story about what you're going through. That story becomes your experience. Now imagine someone wakes up and thinks, nothing ever works out for me. I'm unlucky. I'm broken. That person's mind begins to scan the day for evidence to support that story. And sure enough, every inconvenience, every failure, every delay becomes proof. The mind obeys the dominant narrative, not because it's true, but because it's familiar. This is why most people stay stuck. Not because their situation can't change, but because they've rehearsed the same thoughts for so long. Those thoughts have become their identity. They've repeated the same fear, the same insecurity, the same regret until it became a belief. And beliefs are powerful. Once they settle in, they shape how you see yourself and how you show up in the world. But here's the key: beliefs can be rewritten. Not overnight, but with repetition. Just like negative thoughts reprogram you in the wrong direction, intentional thoughts can rewire you for strength, clarity, and confidence. It's not about lying to yourself. It's about telling the truth on purpose. Because in every hard moment, there's more than one truth. There's the painful truth, and then there's the powerful truth. Let's say you failed. One version of the story is, I'm not good enough. But another truth is, I'm still learning. I'm improving. This doesn't define me. Both are true. The difference is which one you choose to focus on. That choice will shape how you feel, how you act, and what kind of future you create. The mind is programmable. It listens to tone, language, repetition. So ask yourself, what are you constantly feeding it? When you look in the mirror, do you criticize yourself or affirm yourself? When something goes wrong, do you say, I knew it, this always happens to me? Or do you say, this is just a chapter, not the whole book? Because your mind is always listening and it's taking notes. That's why you must become deliberate about your inner language. Start treating your thoughts like the builders of your future, because they are. The more you repeat strength, the more you feel strong. The more you repeat hope, the more you start to believe things can change. You're not brainwashing yourself. You're finally waking up from the old programming that's been running in the background for years. This takes work. It takes awareness. It takes catching yourself when you fall into the old loops of fear and saying, not this time. I'm writing something new. Every time you do that, you take back power. Every time you speak better to yourself, you repair something that life tried to break. And don't wait until you feel like it. The rewiring happens through repetition, not emotion. Speak power even when you feel weak. Speak purpose even when you feel lost. Speak healing even when you're still hurting. That's not fake. It's faith. It's training your mind to follow your direction instead of dragging you down into old patterns. So if you want to transform your life, don't just change your habits. Change your internal script. Talk to yourself like someone you are becoming, not someone you're trying to escape. There's this illusion that happiness must come first before anything else can happen, that we have to feel good before we can do good. But life doesn't work that way, especially when it gets hard, when everything inside you wants to shut down, isolate, give up. Waiting for happiness to arrive is like waiting for a ship at the wrong dock. You'll stand there forever. And this is what most people don't understand. You don't need to be happy to keep going. You need to keep going to eventually feel happy. Action precedes emotion. Discipline precedes inspiration. Meaning precedes motivation. And this isn't just motivational talk. It's psychology. It's neuroscience. The brain doesn't just react to how you feel, it responds to what you do. When you take action, small, consistent action, you shift your internal state. You send a message to your mind, hey, I'm still here, I'm still moving, I still matter. The hardest part of any low point in life isn't the external circumstance, it's the internal paralysis. It's that frozen feeling that says, what's the point? And that question becomes a trap. Because the more you wait for the answer to show up on its own, the more you sink. The real shift happens when you stop waiting for the point and start creating one. Let me put it this way, your life will never move forward if you only act on the days you feel great. Most of your progress will come from the days you don't want to show up. From the mornings where you drag yourself out of bed anyway. From the workouts you push through even when you're drained. From the work you do even while your heart feels broken. That's where real growth lies, in the tension between discomfort and commitment. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need everything to make sense. You just need momentum. Forward motion, even at a crawl, has the power to shift everything. Because momentum isn't just physical, it's psychological. It rebuilds your confidence. It gives you proof that you're not powerless. And over time, it builds something even stronger than happiness, so a resilience, while happiness that's built on easy days will crumble the moment life gets difficult. But happiness that grows out of pain, effort, and endurance, that's unshakable. That's rooted in something real. That's the kind of joy that doesn't depend on the weather outside or the mood inside. It comes from a deeper place, a sense of purpose, a quiet knowing that you showed up for yourself when no one else could. So if today feels heavy, if your heart is tired, if your mind is loud, don't wait for a miracle to lift you. Be your own miracle. Do something, anything, that pushes you forward. Clean your space. Go for a walk. Read 2 pages of a book. Drink water and remind yourself that you're not giving up. Not today. Not now. Because when you keep moving, even when it hurts, you open the door for happiness to return. Slowly, quietly, maybe even unexpectedly. Not like a firework, but like a sunrise, steady, undeniable. And it all starts not with a breakthrough, but with a choice.